I want to introduce our next speaker, Theo Wilson, his presentation, The Impact You Have. Theo is a speaker, poet, and founding member of the Denver Slam Nuba team, who won the National Poetry Slam in 2011. So, Theo Wilson.
Hi. How you doing? Y'all all right? That guy is like really, really smart, and I want to be like him when I grow up. So, my name is Theo Wilson. I do a little thing called slam poetry. How many of you guys have heard of slam poetry? Dang, I'm in Denver. Okay, cool. Slam poetry is just basically a competition where poets write poems and 5 random members of the audience are selected to give numbers to their pain and suffering, and I do this for a living. And so now I am pretty good at it, supposedly. Denver is the home of the World Championship team. Give yourselves a round of applause for being a part of this city. And basically, I'm just going to go into it. I've got 4 poems I want to present. I may only have time for 3. And I just really am happy to present to you. I myself work with children, and yeah, this is about the impact that you have. And I'm going to go into some very intense subject matter. Please understand, this is for your betterment. And I'm going to try to make it fun and try to make you laugh along the way. But we can't turn away from the real issues. Are you ready? Are you ready? 1 man, 4 poems. All right, let's get started. The very first poem is called Powerful, and this is about my perceptions as a little person. When I was a child, I dreamed of becoming the first ever black Batman. Because Lord knows my old neighborhood of Park Hill needed a defender. You see, the people there had been beaten purple by the gang war between red and blue. But to defend my old neighborhood, you'd have to fight the police too, because the heroes behind a few badges were just pretenders. And I remember watching the Discovery Channel when I was just a little kid and thinking, why don't the zebras just run the lions over? Yeah, they're a prey species, but they outnumber the predators like 10-1. And then looking out my window at the flashing lights of a police car and feeling like, dang, in this country, a prey species is what I already was. Have you ever just wished that you were powerful? Like God in the book of Genesis, when his words transformed into the sun, when he decreed, let there be light. And then there was light. And it was shining, just like he said it would be, as if his words were manifestation of his might. Now remember that we were made in his image. So if he peers into my pupils and his reflection ain't perfect, then it's my personal purpose on earth to tell the dirt to get to stepping. Because to achieve greatness or to be lesser takes the same amount of effort. It's about where you sacrifice versus where you want your blessing. Because without question, the first lesson they should have taught us in kindergarten was that words are magic. Because all you have to do is pass air through your lips and people can read your mind. So be mindful of the spell that you are casting. Because if you speak a dark curse into life, you can destroy someone's soul, even if you were only 5 years old. How long have you been abusing your power? How might we have maneuvered knowing that our marriage was mangled because we misused our magic, and that slavery is passed down when we curse at our kids? Why do you think they call it a tongue lashing? Some black kids learn Willie Lynch before they learn the alphabet. Then we wonder why their reading scores hang below the others. Who needs jails and institutions when you can hear him speak and know that the child's already trapped inside the language of his mother? But if the intent that orders the words decides the spell that is spoken, just change the order and intent, and that spell can be broken. You see, words are like tumblers on a universal lock. Use the right combination, unlock anything you want. From a degree to a new job to a house on South Beach. To nab the woman of your dreams, you must possess a mouthpiece. Ask and it shall be given. Poets pack power inside their mouths. The pen is mightier than the sword, and there were ink pens all over my house. Because if a bullet can take a life in 4/10 of a second, that I can change a life in 4 minutes or less. When you've got shackles on your mind, use the key of your speech. Uplift lift your tongue. You ain't got to be Jesus to teach. Speak from your heart. God is already there, and that's powerful. Gunpowder, politicians, platoons, and jet planes can't penetrate it. People plotting to put hands of the reins of their destiny. Grab hold of prophecy. Plow through your oppression to your promise. Don't matter if you black, po, white, or speak Spanish. It's about relationship. Evil does not win without our help. So the good transform themselves. The oppression will vanish. Weapons formed against you only prosper when you pull the trigger. So let them fall from your hands. Grab hold of your brothers and your blessings. We are the electric lines that God's power flows through, and it is time that we strengthen our connections. Let the word go forth from this moment. If predators want to play this game called death, they have to play it alone. Evil and bullets have no authority to tell me to tremble. Go take your war machine and shove it in the dirt and grow a flower or two. Plant a seed and watch what real power can do. But the people keep stepping triumphantly. Masters of the space between our hearts and our tongues, that's everything in our sight. Let lions learn to be a prey species by falling to their knees. And in the hearts of the believers, lovers, and life givers, let there be light. Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm going to keep on rolling, guys. I have a special sensitivity. How many of you guys work with children of color? Excellent. That's pretty much everybody in the room. There's a book written by a woman named Michelle Alexander called The New Jim Crow: Mass Incarceration in the Age of Colorblindness. This book is profound, and it is timely, especially for the country and the era that we live in. In this book, Michelle Alexander breaks down precisely in exact terms with facts, figures, and data about how, now that it is illegal to discriminate based on race, and that legislation has passed, it is now legal again to do it if you have a felony charge. And she breaks down how it's not just the sprinkled racism that we find here and there in America, but the data behind the targeted effort in high places of legislation to retract the gains made by the black community. And it is something that if you work with children, you should read, especially if you work with children of color. This poem is a hard one to digest. Bear with me. I'm going to make you laugh later, I promise. So, this is called The Cycle. It's about how we in the African American community must address some things that have us play into these, when what you can do to help. It goes like this. They tell me that the children are the future, but my generation's harvest has borne some pretty bitter fruit, and to fix it, no one seems to want to get their hands dirty. But if a baby is not touched, it dies. Love is that important. The attention from the stroking releases hormones into their bloodstream that helps the little bodies to grow. Y'all, connection is literally what we live for. So much that it shapes our brains by the first 10 years of our lives. And when infants die from being severed from their mother's touch, this clinical condition is called failure to thrive. This syndrome describes the black condition perfectly. In the middle passage, slavers face mounting losses from African men and women revolting on the ships, so children were taken instead. Plus, in tight quarters, smaller bodies meant bigger profits, and it's a lot easier to throw little Willow Smith overboard than LeBron James. And if trauma can stunt your emotional growth, the plantation was Neverland. A bunch of lost boys and girls captured by the pirates. Think happy thoughts, think happy thoughts. Freedom, and the baby I will birth into a transatlantic terrorist attack. 200 years and thriving, causing a cycle as unbreakable as the rotation of a hurricane, emancipating my family from New Orleans again. This is not some guilt attack on whites. It's simply asking, how can you grow up with shackles in your crib, then feel free to be a good mother? To caress your baby with cotton seeds on your fingers and not plant slave ships between his brain cells in the uterus. A mother's emotions can literally select her fetus's genes, and they ask us why we sprint like lightning. She said, if this oak tree on my back ain't no shelter from this storm, then baby boy, you better run. This is what love looks like. A light from the gunshot still pierces the night. We aimed our offspring at survival and fired. Shut up too quickly for their comfort. So the bullet that stopped Dr. King's heart was aimed for Black America's spine. But we used their nooses like gymnast rings to pull ourselves upward, but still couldn't find our footing. That's why the stanky leg dance was invented by a hanging black man trying to put his feet on the ground. And whoever outlawed slavery forgot to tell the penitentiary where justified black anger can get you warehoused. You have the right to remain violent, but not to resist. Anything you do to survive can and will be used against you. And when cuffs restrain the parents' hands, the youth will fail to thrive. And they ask us why we still have trouble standing. As if Malcolm shot himself in that ballroom, as if they suddenly cannot tell the difference between a pilgrim and a hostage. We did not ask to come to this nightmare. And when we tried to climb to our feet, no cross went unburned, no prosperity went unbombed, no movement went uninfiltrated, no great leader unassassinated, no hip-hop unincorporated. And still, we have to reach out to these babies. Your love is that important, because when the system gets its claws on them, their only concern is turning these kids into cattle, and they're getting so efficient at it, it's starting to make me wonder, did farm animals once have revolutionaries to warn the cows of the true nature of the stakes? Did their personal conflicts blind them to what beef really was? Is that why they're tasing these kids like cattle prods? We are on the verge of permanent domestication. Shame is on the faces of departed ancestors whose ghosts walk the halls of Rikers Island Penitentiary, scratching their heads, wondering why there are as many of us locked up today as there were enslaved in 1850. Somebody better tell these rappers the ice they're skating on is thin, because there's something so cyclical about the way that we are oppressed that the word nigga spelled backwards is again. No one can change this but us. May courage possess our hands to break out of our comfort zone, to do the groundwork, to make the eye contact, to open your mouth and say the words of forever rest in pieces, like the shattered hearts of those whose shoulders we have fallen from. Forget combat. This is hand-to-hand resuscitation, a thriving touch to save a dying generation. Take the plantation and lynch it in the noose of our gripped fingers. Grab my hands and shatter the cycle. Thank you. And now for my serious poem. So, clap your hands if you love your mama. Wonderful. I don't know, if you haven't estimated, I have a strong belief in a creator of some type. I think that molecules are these awesome building blocks, and to say that they just came by random and that no one designed them to make these wonderful life forms that we are is simply like flat out mean-spirited. I think that there's an organizing design that makes this happen. And I think that a woman is like the epitome of that, because I think that life is cool and you got to respect the source of life. So I wrote a poem about it, about what if human beings tried to actually manufacture a woman. Epic fail. So this is what that failure would be. This poem is called Woman. Hope you enjoy it. Did you hear about the woman that they built from scratch? The one whose civil engineers were contracted to construct the arch in her cheekbone so that her smile could hold the weight of her family's sorrows. Eyelashes like power lines so that her soul conveyed clear messages from eyes of high-definition plasma crystals. That is, if anyone even bothered looking into them without mixing their signals. Not a perfect woman, not some top model's video vixen, a real woman the doctors wanted to construct ground up from the start. So they took the exhaled air from baby's laughter and braided it into fiber optic cables to form the muscle fibers of her heart. So that with each laugh, the cable shook and pumped pure joy throughout her being, which was processed by a mainframe computer at the top of her tower. But hours and hours of manpower from IBM, Pentium, Apple, Dell, Sony, and Nokia could not manufacture a microchip to match a natural woman's neurology. So the Pentagon was brought in. And from the Black Ops Division, they reverse engineered her mind power from alien technology. How else could you get a woman's otherworldly intelligence? the know-how to unwrap a sperm and egg and unfold a destiny, then iron out the creases to a college degree, then origami paper crane it so it flies on its own, leaving the nest in the direction it was destined to be. A woman knows which toe on her baby's foot kicked it from inside of the womb and formed the exact stretch mark on her belly. She knows the reasons behind the reasons why you say you cannot stay and can plot the precise distance between your car keys and your infidelity. She knows why you cannot look her in the eye. It's because you are what you focus on, and the men most fascinated by cleavage are already boobs in the first place. And the woman from scratch was coming together, with round-the-clock crews working like red ants on Red Bull, trying to construct the queen they'd always wished they'd come from. Picture crack teams of scientists and architects with severe mommy issues projecting onto the project everything they never had to begin with, which of course left so many unanswered questions like, how strong should the biceps be to cradle a man's ego? Because nothing is more fragile when dropped back down to earth. The mass alone accounts for 80% of the weight of the world on her shoulders. The other part, that comes from the burden of birth. And then the problem was discovered. Amongst all the axioms and formulas, there was one overlooked detail. In the midst of the great scientists, architects, and engineers on the teams, not a single one of them were female. Not a one. Because when it came time to construct the womb, the whole project began to unravel. With all of man's technological advances, none had ever accomplished the art of interdimensional travel, a feat that the uterus had mastered for babies since the beginning of time. A vortex had to be created. So the wife of the chief physicist came up with a solution. She gathered women from all walks of life whose journeys had led them to one common conclusion: a hysterectomy. Because no woman knew better the value of a womb than those forced to live without one. They gathered on the hip level of the feminine structure, formed a circle, and they began to sing. Sing for all the times we tried to recreate women who already existed. Sing for the Botox that stopped the wrinkles when all your skin was trying to do was remember your smile to help your spirits get lifted. For the broken breast implant that leaked for all the tears she kept inside her. For the one-night hit and runs where a woman tried to keep a man by throwing her uterus in front of his tires, hoping that the bump would take him higher so he'd be closer to his potential. And with all the passion in their voices, the vortex began to open up. But what happened after that remains classified. But what we can tell you about the project is this. To build a woman from scratch had to be a man's idea, because only we would mock our own hands by trying to recreate a creator. Our fingerprints can be found upon countless mistakes. We become expert at the art of how to miscommunicate, but if every word in this language could be twisted into lies, there was one amongst them all that could set them back up right, and that word is woman. Woman. A word so beautiful that if I shouted it into the Grand Canyon, I could jump off and fly around upon its echoes. There is a force in this world that even the gods must come to reckon with, and baby, that power is you, and you, and you, and you. Thank you. That's my time here. I'm Theo Wilson. Appreciate that.